So the other day in my Before You Buy review video for Game Ranks, I said Space Marine 2 is what video games should be. That's a big statement. That's something I did not throw out there lightly. So let me elaborate on that. Specifically, I want to point out that it is very biased and it is down to personal preferences, but I enjoyed the hell out of my time with Space Marine 2, and I definitely recommend it to people who are into at least this type of game. It's actually like an overwhelming week for game releases between this and Astrobot on PS5, which I am also really loving, I'll talk about soon. Specifically Space Marine 2, and it being what video games should be. It's really, like I said, it's like my preference, what I want video games to be. And that is, number one, a game structured like this package. It is based around a campaign that you play through. It tells a story. It's fun. It's compelling. It's filled with spectacle. And then there's also some multiplayer on the side. It's not like a shoehorned, added in multiplayer feature. It's like an actually good, decent multiplayer thing that, you know, playing through the campaign, you like the gameplay, you like the world enough, you're enticed to jump into that multiplayer. And then that multiplayer is, the offering itself, kind of humble or really straightforward in the sense that, yes, it does have technically like a season pass roadmap, but it's pretty forthcoming, it's pretty straight up, and otherwise it's just like regular old-fashioned multiplayer, like doesn't have tons of microtransactions or weird stuff. It's not like Fortnite. It's just like, what do you want? Do you want like co-op PvE or PvP mode? Couple of modes, jump in. It seems like they definitely have plans to add more if people like it, but I'm glad that they didn't like overreach or overextend themselves. The focus here was just a good Space Marine experience, and I dig that. The other thing in terms of when I say it's what video games should be is very, very biased, but I mean, I grew up on like the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, GameCube, Xbox, and then kind of into Xbox 360, PS3 era, and I still like miss a lot of games that were very feeling like unique to the 360 PS3 era. Big, goofy, weird, bombastic, B-tier campaign action games. Third-person, big adventures. Full of spectacle and weird, crazy shit that is very video gamey, but just a really good ride. That is the type of campaign Space Marine is. If you played on PS3, 360, and loved running through any type of campaign, or like any, you know, maybe you played Binary Domain or weirder games like Enslaved, Odyssey to the West, you know, something about that time period, it just had like a distinct feel to it. And in my other video, I threw out Gears of War a lot. Gears of War, really, for how it's structured around you having AI teammates that can also be drop-in co-op, and it just kind of feels like how the levels play out, but also in the sense that you're just a big chunky dude. But like you're a heavyweight walking tank. But Space Marine here, that the game is going for that power fantasy, that ultramarine power fantasy. And I say that as somebody who barely knows what I'm talking about, because I am not a Warhammer person. I played the original Space Marine from 2011. I really enjoyed it. Then I played Warhammer 40K Bolt Gun, and I was like, okay, all right, there's something good here. I probably talked about that in videos a while back. But Space Marine 2 now, it's got me all in, man. Like I am in. I've said this publicly that I want to be a Warhammer person now in some shape or form. I'm interested in this stuff because I had so much fun playing the game. Campaign only took me like 10 hours. And again, you may not be into the multiplayer. So like with every game, you got to kind of look at the dollar value cost and time when the price and the length and like the longevity is right for you. But I definitely think you should play it at some point. It picks up like after the last game, and it tries to fill you in throughout the story, but I really think you should watch a YouTube video or get caught up, or just go play the original Space Marine. It's still very playable, and you can knock it out in a couple of hours. This game just has so many memorable sequences. It takes pretty simple gameplay where it's like shoot, dodge, parry, crush, throw grenades, rinse, repeat, but it keeps dropping it in really interesting scenarios. And I think that's where the pacing kind of helps fix some of the repetition in the moment-to-moment, like punch, finisher, shoot, finisher, back and forth, because you're dropped into like pushing territory, you're defending something, you're doing a siege on top of a hill, enemies are swarming you at one point and there's nothing you can do. Sometimes you're in the dark, you're in tight claustrophobic hallways. Enemies and weapons are sprinkled and introduced good throughout, so it just does a really good job of essentially making that campaign feel brisk, feel entertaining because you're always doing something a little bit different. You're still always just running and gunning and being an absolute brute badass, yes, but it's how you go about it. And the other thing for me really was, and I kept using this word, spectacle. I like being wowed. I like being dazzled. I love playing video games, but I like when cool shit happens. And this game consistently has it. You know, buildings exploding, massive wars occurring in real time, right in front of you, hordes of enemies that you have to mow down, which is something that I think Saber really took here from World War Z, that game. You know, that game kind of flopped, but it had some cool ideas, and I liked playing it with friends just to mow down tons and tons of zombies as they kind of pile up. And this has that. You're just mowing down aliens. And it's a shit ton of fun. There's gore, there's all this crazy shit, but again, statues are falling down. Ships are crashing, tracer fire through the air. Stuff is always happening that is just really, really fun to be a part of. And it happens in the co-op modes too. The operations that you can just drop into and drop out, multiplayer, and play through these little things, that also has crazy stuff going on throughout it as well, which I love. I actually like the operations mode, the PvE mode you can jump into. You can select like 6 levels. They're all tied to the story and the campaign. A lot of the times, Titus will be like, I need a B team. I need them to be here. And then like you're playing multiplayer as those other guys to see what else is going on. That reminds me of like the old Splinter Cell co-op campaigns and how they would kind of fill in the blanks of some things. I don't know. I just thought that was a nice touch. And it was another thing that felt kind of old school in a weird way. Like not that old, but still. I know I'm like really rambling here with this one. The other thing was just like the presence of it all, the look of the game, the feel of the game. And that's what really has got me into declaring I find Warhammer 40k interesting, and I would like to know more. Visually, lore-wise, everything, to the way these Marines are set up, the hierarchy, what's going on with the Emperor, what's going on with these different factions, what is going on with Chaos, how long did these big Space Marine guys live, how strong are they really, what's with all these weird creepy robot guys, like weird guys. There's just so much in it, and that just kept making me look around for more and want more, because the game only gives you so much. You can collect like little codex data entries, but like there's only so much. So a lot of it is, I guess, Warhammer set dressing. So it's very cool to live and experience this, but I want more. Specifically because like the design and everything just really, I guess, speaks to me, if we're getting a little bit personal, because obviously the Space Marines are cool. It's just like, yeah, fucking murder Buzz Lightyear, big guy. Like, yes, but it's everything else around it. It's really interesting sci-fi. It's got that grim, dark fantasy aspect to it, where you have these overpowered Marines and lasers and big machine guns, larger than life guys with like robot arms and computers connected to their brains and shit like that. But you also have like cool floating computer skulls and cathedrals and castles and stained glass and candles mixed in with the high sci-fi and computers and weird electronics and all other like mystical aspects. And I don't know, it just felt like it forms a really, really good perfect storm for things I like. I am a building nerd, specifically. Like, I'm not religious, but I love seeing like religious buildings and how they're built, like cathedrals and stuff. Like, I am that boring old grandma that will drag you to a cathedral or a church in a city just to see the stained glass. I actually find that shit really interesting. So to have a game that marries that stuff I'm interested in with also like spooky skeletons and candles and awesome shit with sci-fi space concepts and capital ships and planets and aliens and space murder guys, it's just a really good combo. And I kind of found myself there after finally playing through this, getting whiffs of Warhammer throughout the years, but really getting into it here and like really raw dogging Warhammer. I found myself being like, where has this been all my life? You know, this is cool. This is scratching that itch. This is that thing I've been looking for. And what helps with that, with like all this stuff I find really gorgeous, like the environment design, the art design, all that, is that it has a photo mode. Hell yeah, it's a pretty good photo mode. It's got a decent amount of features. It's not the most full-featured one, but the fact that it's included, I really like it, and I took advantage of it quite a bit. So I don't know if I'm gonna, start painting miniatures or anything like that. I don't have the time or the money or anything for like, I hear that shit gets crazy, but a lot of you guys have already reached out and sent me recommendations for like what books to get into, what else to jump into, possible different games to try, and I'm grateful for that. For those of you who already did send me that stuff, thank you, because it's cool to see a community be like, oh, cool, let's get another guy in here. And it just felt nice. But for me to go back to it, Space Marine 2 is just that good, thrilling, fun sci-fi adventure. The third act goes off the rails with a bunch of crazy bullshit, like a lot of video game single-player adventures do in the third act. But it's the visuals, like I said, but the sense of scale and size and the hordes of enemies, but also the music being really good and the sound effects. Not only like Demetrius Titus is like really cool. Obviously, he's a pretty one-note guy a lot of the times, but his voice acting is great. But it's really the sound effects and stuff. The grunts, the crunch of an enemy, the explosions, the sound, the very distinct sound of some of these weapons, the sound of your sword, the sound your sword makes when you do a finisher right before it goes into an enemy. It's just like such a memorable, cool, satisfying sound. They really nailed a lot of things here, and it feels like just a lot of reverence and love for something, love for a world that I don't understand. When a game is made with that much love and care, you can feel it, even if you're not a part of that lore or that world or that universe. And I think that's where they really succeeded here. I don't stick with multiplayer games forever, that's for sure. And like, I'm not super competitive with the PvP stuff, but I have really liked checking out the classes, but also getting some unlocks and like, changing my Space Marine and just seeing all the crazy shit these guys put on them and just how unique they look. Again, just like appreciating all that stuff. So, I've been having a lot of fun just playing PvE and like blasting enemies with my friends, and that's going to get me some mileage. And like I said, the campaign, maybe 10 hours, maybe 12 hours. There's a couple of difficulty modes, but I really recommend you check this one out at some point, especially, again, just to repeat myself one last time, if you like 360 PS3 era games. Like, it feels like a game you would rent and blast through and love. You know what I mean? But in 2024 with like insane graphics and shit like that. I don't know, it feels good with this one. And it's going to feel the same with Astrobot, where like I'm not being too cold or analytical. It's just straight up fun. And I'm just turning on the camera here and gushing. I really like this game. I hope you do too. If you don't, you'll probably yell at me in the comments. That's how the video game world works. But let me know what you guys think, because I've definitely yapped on for a long time here. Let me know what you think about Space Marine. Of course, if you have any more tips about Warhammer and stuff like that, I would appreciate that. But thank you if you did already send that. But yeah, let me know what you think about Space Marine, if you played the first one, if you have experience with Warhammer 40K games. I definitely want to hear it. If you get what I'm trying to do here, most of the time I'm just trying to talk about stuff I love, stuff I'm having fun with. That's what I did here today, and I hope you enjoyed chatting with me. Clicking the like button does help, but that's it. I'm Jake Baldino. Subscribe because video games. Pizza's on me.